All right, let's go over how can you create your own animation from scratch. So for this class, we use Adobe Illustrator, and that's where we're going to plan our cute monster. And I have pulled this little screenshot from Shutterstock because these are very, very simple monsters made from very simple shapes. All of my students should have absolutely no problems creating any of these little monsters. So you can model it after one of these, or by all means, do whatever you would like. But you want it to be simple. So I've gone into Illustrator and started the process here just to kind of show you how to set it up. Now, completely ignore the layers. But as you know, we're going to need layers when we do our project because we have to name them a certain way in order for Character Animator to track it. But just to give you some ideas, what I did here to create this body, I just started with a simple oval, your regular ellipse. And then, as you know, the white arrow tool, that direct selection tool, you can click on a point, and that will allow you to pull those points up. It gives you handles to pull those points out. Again, if I click on a handle, I can pull it up. I can use the handles to change the shapes. You can hold Alt and pull a handle to pull it separately, or however you want to do it. You can also click on any anchor point, and up at the top, convert it from a pointy point to a roundy point, or vice versa. So you've got all kinds of different options depending on what it is that you want to make. Just remember, you could always use that direct selection tool to make changes. That'd be my background, like my head, I guess you would say. I just used a bunch of circles. This is where I'm going to put the eye in this hole here. But you don't need to have this like background part around the eye actually in the eyeball symbol. So I just put that there. I made these little, I don't know, antenna out of rectangles. So simply took a rectangle tool and drug a rectangle out. And then all kinds of different ways you could do it. You could go over here and use your width tool here, switch over to warp. You could warp it that way, like doing weird little things with it with your warp tool. I didn't. I just changed my pointy points with my white arrow tool. I clicked up on here on the corner, and I made my pointy points roundy points, and then I used these handles to make those different sizes. So, you know, you got whatever you want to use, all kinds of tools at your disposal. And then I just used a circle at the top. Now, this is all going to be one thing because I want this to act as one item, think like an arm or a leg. So you need to group those. Now, once you group things, it's going to be real important that you stay organized. So like I grouped one here and I grouped one here. I just reflected it. So, you know, transform, reflect, and I copied it and put it on the other side. But let's go ahead and look at our layers. So I'm going to go to Window and Layers. At the top, you do need to name it. So up here where it says something else, go ahead and give it a name. You do need to put a plus sign on that because that's your character. And then you're going to start dealing with your group. So my antenna is down here because one of the first things I drew after I drew my body. And I just called it antenna 1 and antenna 2. Once you group them, they'll show with a little line there for each piece, and just double click and name them. Now I know that I'm going to want those to be able to dangle later on. So I'm going to put a plus sign in front of each of those. Anything that you want to be able to move, that plus sign means that those things will move independently in Character Animator. Let's look at Chloe. Chloe is one of the custom ones that comes with it. If you look over here under Chloe, all of her little pieces of hair that dangle, each of those individual pieces has that plus sign. Okay, so things that are going to move, your arms are going to need a plus sign, for example. So just keep that in mind as you're naming your things. Like this whole face with all of these circles, this is all just going to be sitting still. This is just basically my face. So I can select all of those. Now, not my top part yet, so I could scoot that out of the way. But I could select all of those. I'm just going to hold down Control or Shift and click on each of these. So I'm clicked on each one and then my big one, and then I'm going to group it. Control G or hit your group button. And so now, as you see, we're going to start getting these things into their groups. Okay, and turn the eyeball off so you can tell. Okay, so there we go. That's going to be my face, right? And then you just deal with each of the different little pieces. So I'm going to move this down here. So we got an antenna, we got a face, then we've got our other items. So I've created my eye. So now the eyeball itself, this part gets a little bit confusing. You need to have the white of the eye, and you need to have your pupil. And the pupil has to be named that. So if it's a left eye or if it's a single eye, you just do them both left or whatever. You're going to call it left pupil and left eye. And again, I like to come back and look if I don't know for sure what to call something back in here. So you can see it's called plus left eye once you group it. But along the way, it doesn't really matter except the blink needs to have a name and left pupil needs to have a specific name. Okay. Also, this left eyeball, this is going to be what specifies the area that the pupil moves in. So again, not a big deal because you can always come in here later on and adjust some of this, but let's come back over here to this little guy. So I know I need to name this and the little white part together, so I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and click on both, and then I'm going to group it. I know that's my pupil, and it's the left pupil and it moves, so plus left pupil. Okay, so we know that's part of that, and I like to just kind of move things down as I set them up. And then here is the other part of the eye, and then here is my blink. This is just made with an oval with a rectangle over top. That's it. Now, you don't want to have strokes around stuff, so notice I have no strokes on any of these because for cartoon characters it looks better without. Okay, and I need this to go in front, so I'm going to arrange, bring to front, because if we blink our eye, we need the blink to come in front, right? All right, so I already have this part grouped. This needs to be my left blink. That's what that's called. Again, if we look at Chloe, we can see left blink, what it looks like there. So I've got that in there. And then I need to group this whole thing together to be my left eye. So now I've got it all selected, group, and then this is going to be the left eye. So you open this up and you'll see here's the left blink, here's the left pupil, here's that white part. So we'll call that the left eyeball. And then again, back to Chloe here to make sure we name it right. So left eye is what we're going to name the whole top part. So once I have that all together, this is going to be the left eye. And it's going to, actually, the pupil moves, the eye doesn't move, so I don't want a plus sign on there. Okay, so we've got all that in there. So that should give us an eye. And I'll turn off the blink. And then I want to go ahead and move this into position. Now, it's kind of hard to move stuff in position. If you have things turned off, they don't necessarily move. But if they are grouped, they should all move together. Just be sure you're not using your white arrow tool. So I like to click off and click back on to make sure I'm getting a hold of the group. And we'll position this where it goes over top of that opening. Okay, so now I've got my eye in position. Okay, I'm going to close this down and move my eye down here because it's going with the face, which eventually I'll put all this together. All right, over here I've got a hand, and I've got a leg, and I've got some mouths. So at a minimum, we're going to need to have 3 mouths. Now, in the slideshow, you can see there are different mouths that exist. These are what we call the camera mouth shapes. So this looks at the camera and matches. So neutral, surprised, and smile. For the purposes of my class, I'm cool with just those 3 mouths. Now, if you want to be super cool, you can make 11, that's what all these other ones are, 11 different mouth shapes, which are going to be to represent sounds. So these are your visemes. These are going to represent all the different sounds, and if you lip sync it, it uses these. Neutral, surprised, and smile do not work for lip sync. This is going to, you have to record live, and the camera is just going to do its best to match these states, but that's it. So, you know, you may wish to go ahead and delve into creating those other mouths. For the purposes of this example, I am absolutely not going to do that. I'm just going to have 3 different mouths. Surprised, smile, and neutral. Okay, so I've got this first mouth. This is my neutral mouth. I don't need to group it or anything, so that one is fine. I'm going to find out which one that is on here. There we go. And so there's my neutral mouth. Neutral. All right, this here is going to be my smile, so I need to group all of this together. Control G to group. Okay, and then I'll rename this one. Right there, right? And that's my smile. Actually, let's see what that's called. I never do remember these. I always have to go back and look for whatever reason. Yeah, smile, surprised, and neutral. That's our names. So I've got my smile in there, and then this bottom part here, it's this like line with this like circle thing. So these 2 pieces, I'm going to group those together, Control G, and then we'll name that group surprised. Okay, so you want to have at least those. The other thing is these all need to be stacked on top of each other in the position you would use them. So eventually I have to group all of these together because they're all going to be a mouth. So I'm going to put them on top of each other. And I got to make sure they're all going to look okay. Again, make sure you're on your black arrow tool because if you're a white arrow tool, you'll accidentally grab a hold of something that shouldn't be grabbed. Okay, so there we go. Now this is just going to look like this because I didn't put white behind it. Probably had I more time, I would put white behind it, but I'm not going to for now. So anyway, so I've got that in there, and then I'll put this one on top, so it kind of looks like that. You just basically are going to stack all your mouths on top of each other. You could click on all of them and align them if you wanted to, but if you do it, make sure it's set to align to selection, and then you can align them. You can't see it over here, but there's aligned vertical centers, and actually I had it pretty close to that. They didn't even move. So now they're aligned all center. Okay, now once I've got them all stacked on top of each other, I'm going to group them, and then this group here is going to be the mouth. Okay, and so now we've got our eye, we've got our mouth. I need to move the mouth into place. You have to have them all turned on. Well, if they're all grouped, you're okay, but before you build it, you're going to want to turn off the mouse except for like neutral, because that's the one you'll start with. Okay, so there we go. I'm also going to turn that blink off on the eye so that we're not, not able to see our little guy. All right, and then finally, just your other pieces. Now this little hand, this little arm, I just used a blob brush. So recall that a blob brush creates shapes using fills. And I like to draw the blob brush. To double click, well, to make the brush bigger or smaller, you have to double click. And then down here where it says size, that's how you make it bigger or smaller. Okay, but let's say I wanted to create an arm like that arm. You just kind of blob it out there, and it kind of straightens it out too, so it kind of helps you, right? And then, whatever you want to put on the end, if you're going to do, some kind of fingers or whatever. The blob brush just looks a little more normal to me. Like, it looks like I actually drew it, and I'm not a drawer. And then, of course, you can go to the white arrow tool if you needed to move points around or something like that. I also just draw things really, really big and then pull them down. So, again, if I wanted to change the size, like if you were going to give it a teeny tiny little finger or whatever, just double-click your blob brush and make your size smaller. I don't know of a way to do that from within. Like, that's really small. But, if I was going to do something weird like that, this looks really dumb, but it's fine. Okay, so like there's a hairy hand. The blob brush automatically puts all these as one piece. So you just draw them in one color on top of each other. Okay, so that's what I used for this. I do want that to be behind the body, and I need a copy for the other side. So I'm just going to right-click, transform, reflect, and copy so that we've got one for over here. And then these little arms need to go behind my head because they look funny in front. So here we go. We got a left arm and a right arm, so it's opposite of what we're looking at, right? That's actually his left arm. So left arm. Okay, and right arm. And then we can position those. And I'm going to move them behind my face like so. Okay, there we go. And then these are legs. Again, I used the blob brush to draw this. This is a rounded rectangle. I'm going to pathfind those together. So they're one piece. And then I just used the pen tool to create this. I'm going to bring it to front so that it had just kind of a cute little thing on there. Okay, and then this is going to be a leg, so I'm just going to group it again. That'll be the right leg. And then before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and reflect it so that I have the other leg. Copy. Okay. All right, so here's this guy. That's my right leg. And this one is my left leg. And then we'll put them down wherever. And really, they would technically be part of the body, which we haven't really made yet. But we'll just move this down to the bottom for now. Okay. Some other things that I created on here that I haven't done anything with. I'm not sure what this is. Let me turn my transparency grid on. View, show transparency grid. Just to make sure that I'm not missing whatever this little path is. I don't know what this white path is. I'm going to delete it because I don't know what it is. Okay, so I've got all of those things, and then on top of that, I have a group that's this little flower thing. Again, made with 4 ovals, a circle, and then I drew that with the blob tool. And this is just a flower. I'm going to use this flower as a trigger later on, and it will pop up like there on the hand kind of thing. okay? But I'm going to leave it there for now with it turned off, and I'm going to move these legs into position. I might rotate them around a little bit so they kind of have a, I don't know. This probably needs some adjusting on these legs. I'll worry about it later on, but anyway, kind of needs a body. I may have to go in there and put a body on this little guy. Okay, so we have our green guy, okay, and I have a mouth and an eye and a face and the arm and the antenna, and technically all of those pieces are going to be the head, right? So I'm going to move this down, and we're going to select all of this stuff, and this is going to get grouped. And now this is the head, okay? And then these legs, this is going to be the body, which I'll probably add more to later on. I'm going to group. And then the body. Now let's come look at Chloe here. So Chloe has a head. Chloe has a body. Chloe has some hair too out here. But in the basic setup here, we have Chloe with a head and a body. And that's kind of what we're trying to mimic here. Okay? I have a right arm and a left arm. If you had additional pieces like a torso or whatever, you would name them. They have pants. Mine are legs. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to do anything with them anyway. They're just there. Okay, so now we at least have like a starting point to be able to start animating. So I'm going to save this as GreenGuy. And then I'm going to bring it into Character Animator. Okay, so I'm going to pop into Character Animator. Now let me go ahead and close out this project. And then I'm going to start a new, I have a bunch of projects open, but I'm going to say new project here. And somewhere in here I've got character. Alright, so this will be my Character Animator project for GreenGuy. This is going to start me a new one. I'm going to import my GreenGuy up here into the project window. I just double click in there. You can go to File and Import. I just double click. Alright, so Character Animator GreenGuy. And then I need to go find my character. So here's GreenGuy. And then GreenGuy should appear in this project window. And then I drag down to create that timeline under Record. So I'm going to switch to Record and drag this down to the timeline. Now my camera is on the other monitor, so kind of hard to see. But anyway, I'm going to hit my rest pose. Alright, so there we go. As I do my different mouths, they do the thing. As I blink, he blinks. His pupil is moving around, so we're good. He's floating a lot because we have a plus sign next to him, so he just kind of floats. We're going to talk in the next video about how do we rig him. That's called rigging, the rig button here. How do we rig him in here so that we can control him the way that we want? So join me in the next session as we talk about rigging. But I hope that helped you at least get the basics set up. Now I will tell you, all of these layers are named. It's all good to go. But if you go back in and you make changes that involve you ungrouping and grouping things again, they may change their names. So you really don't want to do all of this rigging until you're pretty sure you are done in Illustrator. Going in and changing a color or moving something isn't a big deal. Or even adding something completely new, not a big deal. But if you start working on something that you already have, you got to be very, very careful and work on it inside the group. So like once I've done all of that work, if I decided I needed to work on this flower, I need to make sure I'm double clicking and getting inside this flower group into isolation mode and all the way into where I'm working specifically on the pieces of my flower. Okay, that's really, really important if you're doing updates and you don't want to lose all your progress you've made under character, in Character Animator in the rigging. So anyway, all right, so this is just a basic little guy, introduction to how do we create using just simple shapes. Join me back in the next one and we're going to rig this green guy.